Real adults, with jobs, families, and functioning brains, have actually filed formal complaints that a fast food logo gave them anxiety, that their beans looked at them weird, and that there was simply no perfect moment to drink their coffee. And those are the normal ones. Because the next 37 minutes contain 61 complaints so unhinged, so gloriously stupid, and so painfully real that by complaint number 20, you will never look at a fast food restaurant the same way again. Hit subscribe, smash like, and drop a comment with the most ridiculous thing you have ever complained about. Let's go. 1. A woman complained that she asked for no pickles, and there were 3 pickles, and she was calling her lawyer. She opened the burger like it was a crime scene and counted each pickle out loud as if presenting evidence in court. The worker blinked slowly while she explained that 0 means 0 in every legal system she respects. She slid the burger back across the counter and demanded emotional damages for the trauma of unexpected crunch. The employee quietly offered to remake it, but she said the trust had already been broken beyond repair. She held up the bun dramatically and asked, "How many pickles is too many pickles in a civilized society?" 2. A man complained that he said, "Have it his way," and this was not his way. He stared at the burger like it had personally betrayed him, and pointed at the ketchup placement as if it were a design flaw in a luxury vehicle. The cashier calmly asked what specifically was wrong, and he replied everything with the confidence of a food critic who just discovered injustice. He said the lettuce angle was aggressive and the onions lacked emotional alignment. The worker offered to remake it, but he insisted that the phrase "have it your way" is a binding contract. If it is his way, then why does this burger look like it chose its own way? 3. A young man complained that the sandwich artist put the tomatoes on the wrong side. He opened the sandwich carefully and rotated it like a museum artifact, while explaining that tomatoes belong on the structural left, not the emotional right. The worker stared at him as he described how the entire bite trajectory was now compromised. He said he had mentally prepared for a specific tomato entry point, and this sandwich had blindsided him. The employee offered to flip the sandwich around, but he gasped and said, "That is not how physics works. If a tomato crosses the line once, can it ever truly go back?" 4. A teen complained that his taco shell broke when he picked it up, and tacos should not break. He held the cracked shell in the air like it had betrayed a sacred promise, and said structural integrity should be standard in 2026. The worker calmly explained that taco shells are fragile by nature, but he insisted that he had lifted it with professional care and steady hands. He said he felt personally attacked by gravity. The employee offered a replacement, but he shook his head and said, "Trust once shattered is like this shell. If tacos know they are fragile, then why do they act so confident?" 5. An old man complained that the bucket was not full enough because there was clearly air at the top. He leaned over the counter and pointed into the bucket as if discovering a national conspiracy of oxygen theft. The worker explained that chicken needs space, but he argued that he paid for chicken, not atmosphere. He said the empty gap was mocking him and representing corporate greed. The employee offered to add another piece, but he measured the distance with his finger and said it was about principle, not poultry. Since when did air become a side dish that nobody ordered? 6. A woman complained that the Frosty was too frozen, and it bent her spoon. She held up the curved spoon like evidence from a disaster site, and said a frozen dessert should not fight back. The worker gently explained that frozen treats are in fact frozen, but she insisted there is a soft window of perfection that this one had missed. She tried to scoop again dramatically, and the spoon surrendered once more. The employee offered a fresh one, yet she said the emotional damage to the spoon had already occurred. If a Frosty is too frozen, then what exactly is frozen supposed to mean? 7. A businessman complained that they said "my pleasure" too many times and it felt sarcastic by the 3rd time. He stood at the counter replaying the interaction in his head and counted each polite response like it was passive-aggressive Morse code. The worker blinked politely again and said, "My pleasure," which only made things worse. He claimed excessive politeness creates trust issues, and he does not appreciate emotional ambiguity with his chicken sandwich. The employee apologized in the same cheerful tone which he described as a weaponized kindness. At what point does politeness cross the line into psychological warfare? 8. An aunt complained that the pizza was round, but the box was square, and she paid for a square pizza. She placed the box on the table and traced the circular pie with confusion, as if geometry had personally insulted her intelligence. The employee explained that round pizzas fit inside square boxes for practical reasons, but she insisted she ordered consistency, not chaos. She said if the box is square, then the pizza should respect that boundary. The worker offered extra napkins while she questioned the shape hierarchy of modern society. If boxes and pizzas cannot agree, then what hope do we have? 9. A woman complained that her name was spelled wrong on the cup and it is Kegle, not Kaylee. She held the cup like it was an official document error and explained that each vowel carries generational significance. The barista apologized and offered to rewrite it, but she said the moment had already passed and the misprint had ruined her aesthetic. She claimed the incorrect spelling disrupted her entire morning identity. The worker carefully rewrote the name with intense focus while she supervised each letter. If coffee can get your order right, then why can it not survive your spelling? 10. A dad complained that the speaker crackled once, and he had to repeat his order, which is completely unacceptable audio quality. He leaned out of the car window and explained that he expects studio-level clarity from a drive-thru at rush hour. The employee apologized for the static, but he insisted the brief crackle disrupted his confidence in the entire establishment. He said if the speaker struggles with his voice, then how can it handle complex combo meals? The worker repeated the order perfectly, yet he remained skeptical. If one tiny crackle causes this much chaos, then what happens during a thunderstorm? 11. A woman complained that the restaurant smelled like food, and she found that overwhelming and off-putting. She walked in, took one dramatic inhale, and froze like she had entered a laboratory instead of a burger place. The worker asked if everything was all right, and she whispered that the scent of fries was aggressively present. She said she expected a neutral aroma experience, not a full sensory announcement of chicken. The employee gently explained that cooking food can create food smells, which seemed to offend her even more. If a restaurant smells like food, then what exactly was she hoping to smell? 12. Not a man complained that his Big Mac only had one piece of lettuce, and this was false advertising. He lifted the top bun with slow courtroom energy and pointed at the lonely shred like it had been abandoned by its leafy family. The worker explained that lettuce pieces can shift during assembly, but he insisted that symmetry matters in a civilized society. He said the photo clearly showed more green enthusiasm than what he received. The employee offered to add extra lettuce, but he questioned how many leaves make a promise legally binding. Is one piece of lettuce really a piece of evidence? 13. A teen complained that his Whopper was too big and he could not finish it, and now he felt traumatized. He stared at the burger like it was a physical challenge he never signed up for and said, no sandwich should require strategic planning. And the worker reminded him that bigger is often better, but he argued that this was emotional over-serving. He said he felt pressured by the sheer height of it. The employee offered a box for leftovers, but he claimed the burger had already intimidated him. When did a sandwich become a personal fitness test? 14. A young man complained that his footlong was only 11.5 inches because he measured it with a ruler he brought specifically for this. He placed the ruler on the counter with scientific authority and showed the missing half-inch like it was a national emergency. The worker blinked and said, bread can vary slightly, but he insisted measurements are sacred. He explained that he had been training for this moment and was prepared for accountability. And the employee offered to remake it, yet he demanded to know where the other half-inch went. Can you really short someone half an inch and expect silence? 15. An old woman complained that there was too much taco in her taco. She opened the tortilla carefully and stared at the overflowing filling like it had crossed a line of decency. The worker asked if she meant too much meat, and she nodded firmly and said the balance was emotionally aggressive. She said she prefers a thoughtful ratio, not a chaotic avalanche of beef. The employee offered to remove some filling, but she insisted that moderation should come standard. If tacos can be accused of generosity, then what is the correct amount of taco in a taco? 16. A dad complained that his mashed potatoes arrived in a bowl, and he specifically wanted them in a cup like last year. He held the bowl cautiously and explained that the entire nostalgia experience had been disrupted by curved ceramic walls. The worker said containers sometimes change, but he insisted traditions are sacred and cups build character. He claimed the bowl made the potatoes taste different, even though he admitted they were identical. The employee offered to transfer them into a cup, yet he sighed deeply at the broken ritual. Does container shape really control flavor destiny? 17. A woman complained that her square burger kept sliding off her round bun due to geometric incompatibility. She rotated the burger slowly and demonstrated how the corners extended beyond the bun like rebellious architecture. The worker explained that square patties are part of the brand identity, but she insisted that circles and squares should negotiate better. She said every bite felt like solving a math problem she did not study for. The employee offered extra bun support, yet she remained skeptical about the structural harmony. If geometry cannot cooperate at lunch, then what hope does math have? 18. A businessman complained that they were closed on Sunday and he specifically wanted chicken on Sunday. He stood outside the locked door reading the hour sign like it had personally betrayed his calendar. The worker inside pointed gently at the posted schedule, but he insisted cravings do not respect weekends. He said he had emotionally prepared for waffle fries and now faced spiritual disappointment. The employee shrugged apologetically through the glass while he questioned the concept of rest days. If a restaurant dares to close one day a week, is that really a crime? 19. A teen complained that the cheese slid to one side during delivery and cheese should be perfectly centered at all times. He opened the pizza box with investigative intensity and pointed at the melted drift like tectonic plates had shifted. The worker explained that heat can cause movement, but he insisted cheese should demonstrate discipline. He said every slice now felt psychologically uneven. The employee offered to remake it, but he wondered why gravity always sides with chaos. If cheese cannot stay loyal to the middle, then what stability can we trust? 20. A woman complained that the barista did not draw a smiley face on her cup today like she did last Tuesday. She placed the plain cup on the counter and stared at it like it had forgotten her birthday. The barista apologized and said it was a busy morning, but she insisted that tradition builds emotional trust. She said the missing smiley disrupted her entire caffeine ritual. The worker quickly drew a new one, yet she examined it carefully for authenticity. If a drawn smile controls your mood, then who is really in charge of your day? 21. A man complained that they asked him to pull forward, and he had to wait 2 whole minutes like a hostage. He gripped his steering wheel and stared at the parking line like it was a holding cell boundary. The employee explained they were preparing his fresh order, but he insisted that forward movement without immediate reward felt like betrayal. He said time moves differently when fries are involved. The worker walked out with the bag in under 2 minutes, yet he checked his watch dramatically. So, if waiting briefly in a drive-thru feels like captivity, then what counts as patience anymore? 22. A woman complained that the menu had too many options, and it was entirely their fault she ordered wrong. She stood at the counter squinting at the board like it was a final exam she did not study for. The worker kindly asked if she needed recommendations, but she said, "Choice overload is a corporate tactic." She ordered confidently, then returned minutes later, claiming the restaurant allowed her to make a bad decision. The employee offered a replacement, yet she blamed the font size and photo lighting. If freedom of choice becomes stressful, then should menus start choosing for us? 23. A teen complained that the ice cream machine was broken again, and he was reporting it to the FBI. And he leaned over the counter, whispering like he had uncovered a frozen conspiracy. The worker calmly explained that maintenance issues happen, but he insisted this was a pattern worthy of investigation. He said no machine fails this consistently without secret motives. The employee offered a milkshake alternative, yet he demanded transparency and possibly federal oversight. Other customers stared while he documented the moment on his phone. If an ice cream machine collapses repeatedly, is it malfunction or mystery? 24. An aunt complained that the crown they gave her kid was too small for her head. She placed the tiny paper crown on her own head to demonstrate the injustice and announced that royalty should come in adult sizes. The worker gently explained the crowns are for children, but she said leadership has no age limit. She adjusted it dramatically and claimed the paper crease represented disrespect. The employee offered another crown, but she insisted on proportional recognition. If a cardboard crown cannot fit every ruler in the room, then is it truly a kingdom? 25. A young man complained that the sandwich artist folded the cheese instead of laying it flat, and he lost his appetite. He opened the sandwich carefully and pointed at the folded corner, like it was modern art gone wrong. The worker explained that cheese can shift during assembly, but he insisted flat cheese equals emotional stability. He said the fold created unnecessary texture anxiety. The employee offered to remake it, yet he stared at the crease in disbelief. If a slice of cheese dares to bend, does that really bend your hunger too? 26. An old woman complained that the beans looked at her weird. She peered into the taco bowl and leaned back suspiciously, as if eye contact had been made. The worker paused and asked what she meant, but she insisted the beans had an attitude. She said she felt judged by legumes. The employee gently stirred the bowl to prove the beans were in fact beans, yet she claimed the vibe remained hostile. Other customers pretended not to listen while she demanded reassurance. If beans can apparently glare, then what else in lunch is secretly watching? 27. A dad complained that the coleslaw container had a loose lid and it touched his other food. He lifted the lid like it was hazardous material and described the contact as cross-contamination of vibes. The worker apologized and offered a new container, but he insisted the damage had already spread emotionally. He said once coleslaw crosses boundaries, it cannot be unseen. The employee replaced the side carefully, yet he inspected the new lid with caution. If a lid touches a fry for half a second, does that truly alter destiny? 28. A woman complained that the girl on the logo looked smug, and it ruined her entire dining experience. She pointed at the sign with narrowed eyes and said the illustrated expression felt judgmental. The worker explained it is just branding, but she insisted that smug energy affects digestion. She said she felt silently criticized while ordering her burger. The employee nodded politely, which she interpreted as further smugness. She requested reassurance that the logo harbored no opinions. If a cartoon face can intimidate you, then who is really in control of lunch? 29. A teen complained that the waffle fries had too many holes and he was paying for potato, not air. He held one fry up to the light and counted the gaps like a disappointed engineer. The worker explained that waffle fries are designed that way, but he insisted he ordered substance, not ventilation. He calculated imaginary potato volume lost to empty space. The employee offered extra fries, yet he argued it was about principle, not quantity. If every hole is a missing bite, then should fries start filing solid blueprints? 30. A businessman complained that his pizza tracker said quality check for 10 minutes, and he wanted to know what exactly they were checking. Why, he refreshed the app repeatedly as if monitoring stock prices and questioned the mysterious delay. The worker explained that quality takes time, but he insisted 10 minutes felt like a secret meeting. He imagined a committee analyzing his pepperoni alignment. The employee assured him the pizza was simply being prepared carefully, yet he demanded transparency reports. If quality control feels suspicious, then do we really want faster mistakes instead? 31. A woman complained that her pumpkin spice latte did not taste like actual pumpkin, and she brought a real pumpkin to compare. She placed the pumpkin on the counter with scientific seriousness and took alternating sips and bites like a lab experiment. The barista explained that the drink contains pumpkin flavor, not raw vegetable chunks, but she insisted authenticity requires agricultural commitment. She said the latte lacked field notes and harvest depth. The employee offered extra spice, yet she shook her head at the pumpkin in disappointment. If coffee starts competing with farm produce, then who exactly wins that taste test? 32. A man complained that they forgot his napkins, and he had to use his sleeve like an absolute animal. He held up his stained cuff like evidence of societal collapse and described the moment as survival mode. The worker apologized and handed him a stack, but he insisted the damage to his dignity had already occurred. He said sauces require preparation and civilization depends on paper products. The employee offered extra napkins for the future, yet he examined his sleeve dramatically. If one missing napkin triggers wilderness instincts, then how fragile is modern comfort? 33. A teen complained that the self-checkout kiosk did not say please when asking for his order, and he called it zero manners. He tapped the screen cautiously and said, "Technology should respect human etiquette." The worker explained it is automated software, but he insisted politeness can be programmed. He said if a machine expects him to select options, it could at least ask nicely. The employee nodded while he lectured the kiosk about courtesy. If we start demanding manners from screens, then are we ready for them to judge us back? 34. A woman complained that her Happy Meal did not make her happy and she wanted a refund. She opened the box slowly and stared at the toy like it had failed an emotional exam. The worker gently explained, "Happiness is not guaranteed, but she insisted the name creates expectations." She said the fries were fine, yet her mood remained unchanged. The employee offered an exchange, but she questioned the psychological promise of the brand. If a meal is labeled happy, does it legally owe you joy? 35. A businessman complained that he ordered a medium drink and the ice took up half the cup. He tilted the cup toward the light and shook it like he was auditing frozen inventory. The worker explained ice keeps the drink cold, but he insisted he paid for liquid, not glacier fragments. He said every cube represented lost opportunity. The employee offered less ice next time, yet he calculated imaginary ounces in protest. Well, if cold requires compromise, then how much ice becomes financial betrayal? 36. A young man complained that he asked for the sandwich cut in half, and she cut it at a slight angle and he wanted compensation. He placed the uneven halves on the counter like mismatched puzzle pieces and explained that symmetry affects appetite alignment. The worker apologized and offered to recut it, but he insisted geometry once disturbed cannot be unseen. He said the angle disrupted his entire bite strategy. The employee stared at the bread cautiously while he demanded accountability. If a diagonal cut can cause chaos, then what shape qualifies as safe? 37. A woman complained that she ordered mild sauce and they gave her mild sauce, but she actually wanted spicy and did not say so. She stared at the packet thoughtfully and said the restaurant should have sensed her inner heat preference. The worker gently explained they can only provide what is requested, but she insisted intuition is part of customer service. She claimed the mild flavor betrayed her unspoken expectations. The employee offered spicy packets, yet she sighed at the missed psychic opportunity. If businesses cannot read minds, then should menus come with crystal balls? 38. An old woman complained that the kernel on the logo looked intimidating and gave her anxiety before she even ordered. She pointed at the smiling face and said the beard carried authority she was not prepared for. The worker explained it is simply a friendly brand image, but she insisted his eyes followed her decision-making. She said she felt judged by fried chicken history. The employee reassured her the logo cannot evaluate her order. If a portrait can influence appetite, then how powerful is packaging really? 39. A teen complained that they ran out of Frosty, and he called it a personal attack. He placed both hands on the counter and whispered that he had planned his entire afternoon around that swirl. The worker apologized and suggested another dessert, but he insisted nothing else understands him. He said timing matters, and this felt intentional. The employee checked the machine again while he questioned destiny. If a frozen treat disappears at the wrong moment, is that coincidence or cosmic mischief? 40. A man complained that the staff was too polite, and it made him deeply uncomfortable and suspicious. He leaned closer and said, "Excessive friendliness hides something." The worker smiled and wished him a great day, which he interpreted as strategic charm. He claimed normal service should contain mild indifference for balance. The employee continued being courteous while he searched for hidden motives. If kindness feels suspicious, then what does that say about our expectations? 41. A woman complained that the delivery driver smiled too much and she wanted an investigation. She opened the door cautiously and counted the seconds of eye contact like it was a coded message. The driver politely handed over the pizza and thanked her, but she narrowed her eyes and said, "Nobody smiles that consistently without a secret agenda." He explained he just enjoys his job, yet she insisted excessive cheerfulness suggests hidden layers. He stood there confused while she inspected the box for clues. If a friendly smile raises alarms, then when did kindness become suspicious behavior? 42. A man complained that his coffee was too hot, and then he waited and it got cold and there was no perfect moment. He stared into the cup like it had betrayed a delicate timeline and explained that beverages should maintain ideal temperature on command. The barista apologized and offered to remake it, but he said the window of perfection had already passed. He described the experience as emotionally inconsistent. She suggested sipping sooner next time, yet he questioned why physics refuses to cooperate. If coffee cannot pause time, then what exactly are we expecting from it? 43. A teen complained that the drive-thru menu board was too bright at night and he was temporarily blinded and missed the new items. He shielded his eyes dramatically and said the glowing display felt like a spotlight interrogation. The worker explained the brightness helps visibility, but he insisted it created visual betrayal. He claimed he would have ordered differently if not dazzled by illumination. The employee nodded while he described recovering his eyesight in the parking lot. If a lit menu feels like stage lighting, then how dim should dinner be? 44. An old man complained that the receipt was too long and it kept unrolling across the floor and a child tripped on it. He held the paper trail like it was a scroll from ancient times and blamed modern accounting for excessive detail. The worker apologized and said receipts include promotional offers, but he insisted brevity is a virtue. He described the length as theatrical and unnecessary. Saw the employee folded it neatly, yet he questioned why transactions require novels. If buying fries produces a document longer than a speech, then what are we printing? 45. A businessman complained that the drive-thru line took 4 minutes, and he had never felt so disrespected. He checked his watch repeatedly and said, "Efficiency is the foundation of civilization." The worker calmly handed him his bag and apologized for the short delay, but he insisted 4 minutes is a lifetime in fast food terms. He described the wait as a breakdown of modern speed standards. The employee thanked him for his patience, which he claimed he did not grant. If 4 minutes feels catastrophic, then how fast is fast enough? 46. A woman complained that the cashier did not wish her a good day, and now she was having a terrible day because of it. She replayed the silent transaction in her head and decided the missing phrase altered her mood trajectory. The worker explained it was a busy rush, but she insisted simple words carry emotional weight. She said positivity should be automatic with every receipt. The employee offered a sincere good day at that moment, yet she sighed at the delayed timing. If one unsaid sentence controls your afternoon, then who owns your mood? 47. A man complained that the veggie patty did not taste like real meat, even though he ordered the veggie patty. He took a thoughtful bite and stared at it as if expecting a surprise transformation. The worker reminded him it is plant-based by design, but he insisted expectations evolve mid-chew. He said he wanted the idea of vegetables without the vegetable commitment, and the employee offered sauce options, yet he questioned the philosophical identity of patties. If plant-based food tastes like plants, then what exactly was the backup plan? 48. A teen complained that the crunch wrap was not perfectly round, and he could clearly see it was not round. He rotated it slowly on the tray like a geometry professor evaluating homework. The worker explained that slight variation happens during wrapping, but he insisted circles should respect their reputation. He measured the edges visually and declared it oval adjacent. The employee offered to remake it, yet he stared at the shape with suspicion. If perfection is demanded from folded bread, then who sets the compass? 49. An old woman complained that the staff member said, "Enjoy your meal," in a tone that felt deeply sarcastic. She leaned closer and described the exact pitch as suspiciously cheerful. The worker apologized and repeated the phrase gently, but she insisted the original tone contained hidden commentary. She said enthusiasm must be calibrated carefully. The employee maintained polite composure while she analyzed vocal inflection like a detective. If kindness requires a specific tone, then how do we measure sincerity at the counter? 50. A dad complained that the chili had beans in it, and he did not read the description, but he was still upset. He stared into the bowl and pointed at the beans like unexpected guests. The worker calmly explained the ingredients are listed clearly, but he insisted surprises should be optional. He said he trusted chili to make responsible choices. The employee offered a different item, yet he remained focused on legume betrayal. If reading the menu becomes optional, then who is responsible for the beans? 51. A businessman complained that the line was long because everyone loves it, and that was the restaurant fault for being too popular. He stood outside staring at the crowd like it was a personal inconvenience arranged just for him. The worker explained that high demand is usually positive, but he insisted success should be managed around his schedule. He said popularity without personal priority feels disrespectful. The employee offered an estimated wait time, yet he calculated how many customers dared to arrive before him. If a place is loved by everyone, then should it apologize for the applause? 52. A man complained that he ordered extra cheese and they put extra cheese, and now his cardiologist was involved. He lifted a slice dramatically and watched the cheese stretch like a medical emergency unfolding in slow motion. The worker reminded him that extra means additional, but he insisted nobody warned him about the emotional consequences of abundance. He said the cheese commitment felt aggressive. The employee offered a remake with normal portions, yet he stared at the molten layer thoughtfully. If you ask for extra and receive extra, then who exactly wrote the prescription? 53. A woman complained that the cup sleeve was slightly crooked, and she could not enjoy her drink knowing that. She rotated the cup carefully and adjusted the sleeve by millimeters like a structural engineer correcting imbalance. The barista, apologized and straightened it, but she insisted the first crooked moment disrupted her entire caffeine alignment. She said, "Symmetry builds trust." The employee handed it back perfectly centered, yet she examined it under the light once more. If a cardboard sleeve shifts 1 degree, does that really tilt your entire day? 54. A teen complained that the free Wi-Fi password was too complicated, and he came to eat, not to solve a puzzle. He stared at the receipt with the printed password inside like he had been assigned homework. The worker explained security requires complexity, but he insisted hunger and encryption should not mix. He typed slowly and accused the combination of numbers and symbols of being dramatic. The employee offered to spell it out, yet he shook his head at modern inconvenience. If lunch requires decoding skills, then are we dining or enrolling in cybersecurity? 55. A woman complained that the Ronald statue outside winked at her, and she had not slept since. She pointed toward the entrance and described the wink with unsettling detail as if it happened in slow motion. The worker explained, statues do not move, but she insisted the eye shifted knowingly. She said she felt chosen by fast food destiny. The employee reassured her it is a fixed structure, yet she glanced back suspiciously at the silent clown. If a statue appears to wink, then is it the statue or imagination working overtime? 56. A man complained that his burrito was wrapped so tight he pulled a muscle unwrapping it, and he was filing a claim. He held his arm dramatically and described the tortilla tension as industrial strength. The worker apologized and said tight wrapping keeps ingredients secure, but he insisted security should not require stretching exercises. He said the burrito fought back. The employee offered to unwrap the next one gently, yet he flexed cautiously in protest. If a burrito demands upper body effort, then does it qualify as a workout plan? 57. An old man complained that he asked for extra gravy and they gave him extra gravy, and it was too much extra gravy. He stared at the overflowing container like it had ignored moderation laws. The worker reminded him that extra was the request, but he insisted there is tasteful extra and reckless extra. He said the ratio crossed into dramatic territory. The employee offered to remove some gravy, yet he questioned how abundance became overwhelming. If extra becomes excessive, then where exactly is the gravy line drawn? 58. A businessman complained that the crust was too crusty on the outside and too doughy on the inside, and he wanted a crust that was both simultaneously. He tapped the pizza edge thoughtfully and described the texture imbalance like a failed engineering project. The worker explained, baking requires compromise, but he insisted perfection should be standard. He said he expected crispy softness and harmonious unity. The employee offered a remake, yet he pondered the physics of bread. If crust must choose between crunch and chew, then can it ever satisfy both worlds? 59. A young man complained that the loyalty points did not load instantly, and he stood there for 3 minutes looking foolish. And he refreshed the app repeatedly and glanced around to see if anyone noticed his reward delay. The worker explained the system sometimes takes time, but he insisted digital gratification should be immediate. He said 3 minutes felt like public embarrassment. The employee assured him the points would appear soon, yet he stared at his screen anxiously. If loyalty requires patience, then is it truly loyalty or just waiting? 60. A woman complained that the golden arches looked slightly uneven from the highway, and she found it unacceptable. She described driving past and noticing what she called a suspicious tilt in architectural symmetry. The worker explained perspective can distort angles, but she insisted branding should survive highway speed scrutiny. She said visual balance builds national confidence, and the employee listened while she analyzed distant signage alignment like a structural audit. If roadside arches appear uneven for a split second, then is that really a structural crisis? 61. A man complained that he complained last week and nothing changed because the fries were still delicious and he wanted them worse so he would stop coming here and spending all his money. He stood at the counter holding a fresh batch and admitted they were perfectly golden again. The worker blinked and said, improving flavor is usually the goal, but he insisted consistency was sabotaging his budget. He claimed he needed at least one disappointing fry to regain self-control. The employee offered a refund, yet he refused and grabbed another fry thoughtfully. If the biggest problem is that the fries are too good, then is that really a complaint or a confession? Now, after hearing all of that, take a second and breathe, because somehow these were real moments in real restaurants with real confidence. From geometry disputes to emotional lettuce trauma, we have officially entered an era where fries can cause identity crises and napkins determine civilization. The wildest part is someone somewhere is probably filing a complaint right now about the angle of their straw. So if this chaos made you laugh or question humanity, hit like before someone sues over seasoning. Subscribe for more unbelievable customer drama. And tell me in the comments which complaint made you lose faith in common sense the most.